You're listening to the Deep Purple Podcast, a fan podcast about one of the most legendary bands of all time, Deep Purple. We take a look at the music, history, and people behind the band Deep Purple and beyond. Welcome to the Deep Purple Podcast, the first and only podcast devoted to one of the greatest bands in rock history, Deep Purple. Today's episode is episode number 120, Whoosh Revisited. And coming to you from the unseasonably miserable suburbs of Chicago, I'm your host, Nathan Beaudry.
That was quite a crazy intro, Nate.
You're welcome.
And yeah, your voice went up like 3 octaves. And coming to you from the suburbs of Providence, I'm your co-host, John Sleeveless in Seattle, Matola.
Wait, were you in Seattle? Well, no, you weren't in Seattle. You were just hanging around Rhode Island on your time off. So what's that all about?
Yes, I was. That was a nickname that our good friend Rich gave to me. Sorry. That my good friend Rich gave to me. He gave it to both of us. Yeah.
He gave it to both. We're both sleeveless. I'm very rarely sleeveless. I'm shirtless. I guess that's technically sleeveless, but very rarely with a shirt, no sleeves.
Well, over the past couple of weeks when I was on vacation, we had some on and off weather. It was actually, honestly, it was kind of miserable most of the time, which is, kind of unfortunate.
Hence my intro.
Yeah.
It was absolutely miserable here.
Yeah, that's why I thought this would be appropriate. But anyways, one of the days he had texted me and said, "Are you free to hang out and day drink?" And I'm like, yes. So but it was it was about 1,500 degrees out, so it was humid. So of course, I went out and I was wearing shorts and a tank top, and I mean not like a wife beater, like a tank top, regular tank top.
Mm-hmm.
So walk into this place that's in his neighborhood, is a restaurant, an Irish bar. Go up to the bar, sit down, say hello. Immediately the bartender comes over and says, we got a rule against people being in here with guys with sleeveless shirts. And so I'm like,
just guys?
Yeah. And I'm like,
ladies fine.
Well, yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
There were ladies around in sleeveless shirts, blouses, whatever, tank tops, which I mean, I get the rule, they have rules in like fine dining establishments, no sandals and stuff like that, and no tank tops, or nightclubs or whatever. And I mean, it wasn't a dump, but I mean, it wasn't a white tablecloth type of place. So I'm just kind of like, okay, well, this is what I'm wearing, so I don't know what you want me to do.
So and I mean, clearly I can't eat here or drink.
So I mean, but I mean, my thought was, I wasn't rude or anything, because I mean, my thought is just like, okay, your house, your rules. I mean, if I'm not going to raise a stink, because obviously, Rich goes there a lot. So, I'm not going to do anything.
You should just start tipping tables over. Screw you. Right, Rich? You with me?
He's like, I don't know this guy. So I'm just like, I'm not going to do anything to embarrass him, but I also don't ever cause a stink in public, so I'm just like, okay, well, so what now?
We're at an impasse.
So he's like, well, I can just get you a shirt from back here and you could put it on. And so I'm just like, all right, like somebody's dirty old shirt, or what is he?
Like a loner shirt, and the odd chance that some guy's gonna walk in with a sleeveless shirt on.
And I felt like it was one of those comedy shows or whatever, where they're just like, sir, you need to wear a jacket, and they give this a guy a horrible blazer that doesn't go with anything that he's wearing.
Exactly.
So he comes out with this fucking large, I wear a small to medium t-shirt. He comes out with a large Guinness t-shirt.
It's down to halfway down your thighs.
So I'm like, all right, sure. And he was kind of apologetic. He wasn't mean about it or anything. Yeah. And so I'm just like, no, it's fine. I get it. It's if I want to hang out here, I'm gonna do that. So I go into the men's room, put it on. Exactly. I come out and the freaking shirt is looks like a dress practically, so I'm like, I tried to roll it up and not look stupid or anything. And so, yeah, anyway, so the next day, so we hung out for a while, had a good time, regardless. And then the next day, Rich sends me a text of a clip of the Dixie Dregs doing Sleeveless in Seattle with Steve Morse. And so and so I was like, haha, I said that this is cool. And he's like, actually I sent that to you because of like yesterday's incident. And I was like, oh,
Yeah, you didn't even get it. You're like, oh, cool. I really like the guitar solo.
well, yeah, I was like, all right, this is a cool. So, well, I mean, I'm used to you guys sending me
Yeah,
random
that's true.
stuff
Yeah, we
like
do
in
that all the time.
texts.
Yeah.
So, but I mean, how quickly I forgot, but
That, interesting. That's my hopefully I'm not giving too much of my wife's medical history here, but years ago we were in you know my friend Chris, who I own the studio with and was in a band
Mhm.
with. He was staying over with us and when we lived in Manhattan, and Jen's friend Debbie was also staying with us. So it's kind of weird, random, like the two people staying with us in our tiny one bedroom apartment. They didn't know each other or anything, but they got to know each other pretty well because of what happened. So we're there, and then we wake up one morning. We have this big plan. We're gonna go downtown, and we had we had the whole day plan, and Jen starts not feeling so good. She said, I'm not feeling too good. I don't know what's going on. Um, and then eventually she's like, I'm in a lot of pain. We got to go to the hospital. We lived right down the street from a hospital, like 4 or 5 blocks. So we walked over there, told them, just amuse yourself. So they end up like hanging out in the city, like, um, you know, all day. So this turns into she's there all where I'm with her all day. The pain just keeps getting worse and worse. Obviously everything turned out fine because this was like I don't know 17 years ago or something, 16 years ago. Um, so she had this she ended up just having like this cyst that just never knew, like everybody does, and had no idea it was there. And they had to put her into surgery overnight. She stayed the night. I slept on like a couch there. And but they told her afterwards it was the size of a grapefruit. I'm like, holy crap,
Jeez.
like what is this? And the same thing happened to my mom. My mom had some like a tumor removed when I was a kid that was like the size of a grapefruit. It's like, where the hell does it go? Like, where is it? So anyway, he gets home, tell them the whole story and everything. It's like, oh my God, that's crazy. And then she was like instantly better and never been a problem ever again. So, like a week later, so my friend Chris is staying with us. He goes back to, where was he living at the time? I don't even remember where he was living at the time. Goes back home. About a week later, a box comes in for us from, I think it was like Harry and David or something, with like a dozen grapefruits. Because Chris is a jackass, and he has to always make light of a situation. So
Yeah.
he sends us this, and Jen, much like you, is just like, oh, that's great. She loves grapefruit, so she's like, oh, this is great. That's so nice of him, and blah blah blah. Because I open it, I'm like, what a jackass, and she's like, what are you talking about? Like, this is so sweet, and she's like so happy and everything. And I'm like, you realize why he did this, right? Like she had just like no idea why this had happened, and then I explained it to her, and she's like, oh yeah, you're right, he is a jackass. But we enjoyed some delicious grapefruit um, for some time. So
Well, I would say that, in the two stories, like your friend sending you a reminder of a situation versus mine, I think yours wins the biggest jackass award.
yes, Rich's was cheeky and fun. Chris is just a giant jackass and always has been. Um, he doesn't
Oh.
listen to the show, but if he did, I would still say the same.
Mhm.
So anyway, speaking of grapefruits and jackasses, also the weather's been horrible here as well, although it's been mostly rainy and cold, like
Mhm.
a super rainy and cold July. So there you go. Um, but hey, if you want to listen to our show and our stories about medical details and being sleeveless in bars, and you want to help support us, you're like, this is some great content, guys. This is my first time listening. I thought I was going to listen to Deep Purple. I got to hear these amazing stories instead. I don't even care about listening to Deep Purple. Then you can help support the show in a number of ways. Oh my God, I didn't even check our podcast reviews. I'll check that in a little bit. But you can leave us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts. You can buy some merch from our Etsy store, including t-shirts, mugs. You can become a patron on Patreon or PayPal for as little as $1 a month. You can help support the Deep Purple podcast. And speaking of people that support the Deep Purple podcast, coming in at the turn it up to $11 tier, we have Clay Wambacher, Frank Thielgard Mortensen, Alan Ain't Too Proud to Beg, and Mikkel Steen. At the $10 Someone Came tier, we have Steve Seaborg of NameOnAnything.com and AllTheWorldsAstage.net, Ryan M., Jeff Bryce, Gerald Kelly, and Victor Campos. Thank you to all of you great, wonderful people that help support the greatest Deep Purple podcast in the world. We really appreciate it. And in a second here, I'm going to pull up and see if we have any new podcast reviews. It can be very anticlimactic if we don't. If I can close this silly thing out, podcast reviews. Okay, let's take a look. We have the date. Oh, we do.
Hi-yo!
Oh, hey, oh. I think we have. No, that one's an old one. So we have coming
Oh,
in from Niels from Denmark, 5 stars. Neil says, very entertaining, a little heart and then the Danish flag twice. Really fun. I can laugh with you as I was in the conversations. Like to have a fan talk with you. Oh, I would love to have a fan talk with you too as well, Niels. Thank you so much for your kind words about the Deep Purple podcast. We really, really appreciate it. And then, oh, what else do we got going on? So patrons. So funny you're talking about t-shirts and going to a bar. I was at home, minding my own business when I got a little letter in here on this dot matrix printer paper, and I was like, "What the heck is this?" So I opened it. It was in a package. So I open it up. It says, "Dear Nate, you've received a gift from Peter Gardot. Here's what they wanted to say to you." It says, "A wonderful shout out during DPP episode number 114 that deserves a prize. Get one for your father too." And so I'm wearing it right now. It is a Caldor t-shirt
Caldor.
where shopping is always a pleasure. I don't think I even remembered that tagline.
Oh.
But yeah, it's really nice. Actually, it's from the same place that I had gotten you the Almax shirt from. So you probably received a similar printer paper thing.
Yeah, when you said the dot matrix, I'm just like, Peter Godot has to be involved.
Oh yeah, exactly. There's just there's no two ways about it. But what happened is I was going through some old photos and I found a picture of my father in Caldor that I had taken when I was a kid. And one of those things where I remembered taking the picture, and I remember my dad just kind of like just humoring me. I was like, "Dad, I'm going to take a picture of you in Caldor," and he's like, "Oh, fine." Like, who knows? So I took this picture of him, and he's just standing in an aisle in Caldor. Like, I have no like why I thought that would be a good idea, but it's always been in our family pictures, and I hadn't seen it in years. So I of course I saw as soon as I found it. I was showing my daughter some old pictures. I shot it to Peter Gardot and told him that, and that's why he's saying he should get one for my dad, one of those
Oh,
Caldor shirts.
nice.
So
Always
it's
so thoughtful.
I gotta say it's from local vintage nostalgic apparel, which tends to
They got some
they're
cool
based
stuff.
out of Jamaica Plain, Massachusetts. So they're really based around like kind of New England vintage stuff.
Yeah.
So if you are in that area and want something cool like that, it's a great place to check out, and very comfortable shirt, comfy shirt.
Yeah, they do have some cool stuff that's very, very local to New England.
Yeah,
So
very specific. And I was it when you had, maybe it was um when you got that t-shirt, I sent I showed my wife, and she'd heard me talk about Al Max like a million times for like the whatever 20 years we've been together, but she's like, I never realized it was spelled that way. She always thought it was Almax, which makes sense, right?
yeah, I would have guessed. Yeah.
She's not from around there. So anyway, and in other news, the last little news before we get into the main thing is we have solidified our plans, and you are coming to visit me in the Chicago area, and we're going to see the Dead Daisies.
Hi-yo.
September 11th, 2021. We're going to be tearing up Joliet, Illinois, or Joylet as they call it on the Pod of Thunder podcast. And
Yep.
we're going to be seeing the Dead Daisies, and had a few people express interest in meeting us there. So we'll be putting out the stuff. I'm just trying to figure out how to put like a bumper at the beginning of the episodes or something, just to let people know. I mean, obviously there's people all over the world. I don't think Niels from Denmark is going to be flying over. It'd be great if you did, Niels. If you do, drinks on me. But if anybody
cover it.
is in the area and wants to come pop in the show, let us know, and hopefully you hear this first. What I want to do is put that bumper on, so like before any episode for the next whatever 2 months, it'll play and let people know that it's coming up. So I put some stuff on social media, but we'll see if anyone wants to meet up.
Well, I'm excited because number one, I get to meet you in person after.
Meet me. Like, never met.
That was my favorite joke. I get to meet Nate finally. No, I get to see you in person like for the first time in like 20 years. I've seen you for like the past like 2 or 3, but I mean it's only video. And
right.
we get to see Glenn Hughes, and we get to
Yeah.
go to a concert, and we get to potentially hang out with people. And
Yeah.
my joke is that I get to terrorize your kids, although you say it'll probably be the other way around.
Most likely.
Um, we'll see.
I got my little fuzzy cover for my portable recorder so we can record some on the go stuff.
It looks like people think we're carrying around like a small dog.
I
Like we carrying it around. They're like,
I'm sorry, sir. No, I'll be like, it's a service recorder. Okay, that's fine.
Is like one of those Paris Hilton dogs, one of those little purse pooches.
That's what it looks like.
Yeah,
I could just put like googly eyes on it. A little tongue hanging down.
Oh. Oh, but I think that'll be a lot of fun. My favorite was the other day though. I needed to book my flight, or I was getting into it, and I forget when can you remind me when the date is again? And you said it was September 11th.
Yes.
And then you're like, what happened to never forget? And my response was, oh, I forgot.
There you go. There you go. Never forget.
Apparently I forgot that day. I forget what the other thing, but
it's an unfortunate date, but hopefully the show will.
Hopefully we'll bring a little.
Oh my God, that's going to be the, oh my God, it's going to be the 20-year anniversary.
Oh, wow.
Holy cow. Wow. I didn't even think about that. Yikes. All right. Well, hopefully this is guaranteed to be a better day than it was 20 years ago. So, wow, 20 years. That's crazy. I work with people who weren't even born when it happened, or were like 1 or 2 and have no memory. It's like, wow, it's crazy.
Yeah,
Can't
me
remember
too.
the world before that.
So that's just confirms one thing, is we're freaking old.
That's right. That's absolutely right. So, hey, listen, everybody, this week we are revisiting Whoosh. Why? Well, because this is coming out the week of the release date, which I believe is, I probably should have looked that up. I think it was August 7th. Let's see. Because my mom's birthday was the next day, if I remember. Release date. Because it was supposed to be June 12th. Yes, August 7th. So yeah, this will come out on August 2nd, a few days before. So it'll be the week of, like that where it would have been released on that Friday. And it's the year anniversary. And we kind of talked about it a year ago when we did our first initial run. We looked at the Whoosh in 2 parts, episode number 68 and 69, if you are interested in checking out those episodes. And it was the first time we'd heard it. We recorded it like literally the day it came out, and wanted to have like our real-time reactions. And it was a fun episode to do, but at the same time, I felt like, wow, I need like some time to process this. And a few people did comment like, well, you guys were a little harsh on the album. I mean, I wouldn't say we were harsh in our language, but some of our ratings were just a little like trying to process this. And then I know in that summer, I kind of listened to it quite a bit. I listened to it quite a few times that summer. And then hadn't listened to it too much until recently, leading up to the episode. Spun it a few more times. And every time I listen to it, I feel like I listen to it more critically and gain new appreciation for it. And overall, really dig the album. But we're going to kind of go song by song and talk about our thoughts on the album. So overall, what is your kind of memory of the album, and before we kind of start getting into some of the songs?
From from last year?
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, it's hard. It's hard to like formulate like a memory of it, because like, we talk about the older albums that we've been into, and it's like there's so much to connect to it. And this one is like, I just remember like, okay, we're gonna I know it sounds really kind of almost like I don't know what's the word, like utilitarian, but it's like, okay, we're going to do an episode about it. We're going to listen to it. Okay, we listened to it.
Yeah.
It's a new Deep Purple album. I'm like, I don't know. I don't really get, I guess, excited about new albums anymore. In general, just because, music has changed so much. And I know that some people still do when they buy, vinyl, and they get excited about release dates and stuff. But I mean, so much stuff is like released, ahead of time, singles and things like that, that nothing's truly a surprise anymore. So, I mean, I remember thinking like, all right, like I hope this will be, cool. And, was looking forward to, listening to it with you. And yeah, that's about it, really.
All
I
right.
wish it was a little less boring, but it's kind of
Well, I
like,
mean, it's only a year old, so you can't have like a really great story about like there's not like a ton of nostalgia. Although I like listening to it again, I remember just like sometimes you listen to an album and it just imprints these like really really vivid images in your mind of where you were when you heard it and everything. And it's not always the first time. Like sometimes you listen to something for years and then there's something happens while you're listening to it and it just imprints on your brain, and then every time you hear that song or that album again it makes you think of that. That's kind of me. For some reason with me, I took the kids to the drive-in at Culver's, which is like a local burger place. Like it's like
mhm.
fast food, but it's like really good burgers. It's so I just remember being in the drive-through line with some of my kids, two maybe three, I don't remember. All of them present, but I remember just having this playing while we were in the drive-through line, and like for some reason now, and it was maybe like the seventh or eighth or ninth time I'd listened to the album, but now from now on, every time I play this album, I'm in the drive-through line at Culver's, which is a
Yeah.
really weird,
Hmm.
weird reaction, but it's kind of that for some reason that's that summer. It was the summer when everything was like super locked down and wasn't
Yeah.
much we could do. We were just trying to figure out things to do every day with the kids and trying to be safe, and being at work was a nightmare and all that. So just that's kind of like the time frame when this came out is going through that really difficult summer, wearing a mask in 90-degree weather and all that sort of stuff. So
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think that kind of plays into it. Like, that's not the first thing that springs to mind, but I mean, I think that it's just like, most things that, happened a year ago, like, most people, like, I guess are like, put it in the rear view.
yeah.
I mean, there were some good things. There were some good things. Like, I mean, I have some decent memories of like, good times that I had, because I mean, you try and make the best of it. And I mean, there were a lot of times where the best of it was made and it was legitimately, fun or
Mhm.
relaxing or a good time. And, you'd forget what was going on. But now, I mean, literally, like everything is just kind of like, oh, like kind of like nothing happened, and in the meantime you have
Nothing at all.
the nothing at all. And and you have but then you have the news on in the background trying to scare you about the new variant and cases going up and all this other stuff, and then you start to get worried again. But then you think about a year ago and you're like, it's not that, it's not going to happen again. But then you
Yeah,
know
I feel like we booked our we booked, like I bought the tickets for the show for the Dead Daisies, and then you booked your flight, and then immediately the next day it's like everything's going really bad. Every state's getting worse. The variants are terrible, and I'm like, oh no, we're not heading back to this again, are we? Is this show gonna be freaking canceled? Like, oh,
well, you know what, even if
fingers
it is, i'm
crossed.
i'm free I'm freaking coming out there anyway.
We'll just hang out in the basement, record a couple in-person episodes or something.
Exactly.
Well, hopefully not. But anyway, here we are. We got the Whoosh album, and should we kick it off with a little "Throw My Bones"?
Throw them.
All right, let's throw them.
I don't know what lies ahead. It's all a mystery, man. I heard it said, you do your thing, you do your best. I take a guess.
All right, so "Throw My Bones," John. What are you thinking of this track, this opener?
So I should probably do a disclaimer at the beginning. Is like, I don't remember what I said last year.
Oh yeah, I think we should probably both mention that. Like,
Yeah.
I don't really remember. I don't remember any. And
Or
that's
my
another thing we need to
ratings,
talk
or
about. Do you want to do ratings again, and then like blind ratings, and then we can compare them to our ratings last time?
well, I don't know, because
We don't have to.
like, yeah, because I mean, I was like listening again today to the album, but it's like I still feel like I don't like know it well enough where I'd be able to distinguish it if we don't listen to the whole album again. And we're not doing that on the show, like
Yeah,
listening through to all the tracks. So I don't know. I mean, I don't know if we should rate
okay, well,
again,
we don't have to. But
but
this was the first single that came out for the
yeah.
album. They released it. I don't remember, but I want to say it was like April, like February or March that this got released as a single with a video because they were gearing up for this June release that eventually ended up getting pushed back because of COVID. So that was the first thing I heard, and I thought it was a really great opening riff. That I thought that was really cool. And I think like what I find on this album, like listening to it a little more critically here a year later, is that it's really strongly riff based, but it's maybe not as like sticking. It's not like as hit you over the head or as blatant as like the Blackmore era riff stuff. Like there's a lot of riffs going on here, but it doesn't feel like super riffy.
Right. I mean, it's like you just were able to sing it or hum it, whatever. So I mean, it's obviously memorable, but I think like you know, the like if you think about like the classic Deep Purple riffs, like just think about when we listened to like the Burn Isolated track, right? I mean, that was pretty raw, you know, whereas this is really polished. But I mean, also recording techniques, Bob Ezrin, like the whole 9 yards. I mean, obviously it's going to sound really good. But I kind of like how like I want to say like I guess it's really groove oriented. There's a good groove to it. You know, there's a nice layer of sound. I still like how the album is produced in this song too. And I like the I just know like you know off the top of my head the riff and then the you know the verses and chorus are really catchy. It's not one of those Gillan choruses that it sounds like he you know tacked it on. It was following the melody type of thing. You know like some he can do sometimes, but
yeah, and I think Gillan is really strong lyrically here and melodically, like you said. This has a really good, like great, like triumphant sounding chorus, like very melodic, very like sounds like he's just making this great proclamation. I still don't really know what he means by throw my bones, but like looking through the lyrics, and the lyrics book in for this album is just so weird. Like it's all written like an E. Cummings poem. It's all just like it's making shapes and everything. But he's just talking about, he keeps saying throw my bones, and I'm always just like, I still don't know what that means. Maybe I'm just a dummy, but
I mean it's still a cool phrase. I know that
yeah.
like a lot of times like lyricists will, especially rock lyricists, will just put a phrase together. It's like it doesn't really have to mean anything as long as it sounds cool.
It's a hard day's night, or 8 days a week, or something, just some nonsensical thing that Ringo said. Oh, let's make a song out of it.
Right, but it sticks.
Yep.
So
for sure.
But yeah, it's good. And of course, the first impression I got from hearing it is that it's just like, you got Gillan in his 70s, and like you just close your eyes and listen to the album, and you think that it's him on like any of the 80s albums, because obviously his voice changed and matured a little bit, but it's really not that different from like like anything like in the from my ears, like in the say mid to late 80s 90s, like all the way through until now, which is pretty incredible.
Yeah, and in this song in particular, you've got this great you've got Don Airey doing the bam 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 bam, like this, like really building a lot of tension. You've got Gillan doing some background vocal harmonies. You've got and the Morse solo on this one always sticks in my head. It's one of those ones that I could be just walking down the street or walking around or walking to my office at work or whatever, and just have this guitar solo pop in my head. I don't know what it is about this particular solo, and I don't necessarily feel that way with anything else on this album as far as solos go, but it's just that he has that like, and then he does that really bluesy, he does this like little weird chromatic thing, and it's just always popping in my head. Like it's almost annoying. Like oh my god, I can't get this out of my head. But it's in a good way. It's such a great solo. And upon listening to this again recently to just get ready for this episode, I'm just reminded of the fact that there's so many people out there that write off Morse and say Blackmore is the only one or whatever nonsense. And I'm just like, wow, like Morse can shred and he can play fast and he can do all that stuff, but he's got so much interesting melodic things that he throws into his solo and just doesn't get the credit he deserves from the older of the gray-haired ponytail brigade, as you referred to them the other day. A callback to our Airey interview.
Yeah.
And then I like Gillan, kind of when you talked about Gillan being in itself, like he has this kind of laid back, like he just has this I'm Ian Gillan, I don't give a shit attitude. I mean, he's always had that attitude, but on this album he does that, like that what's the rush. Yeah, he does this like little laugh and like yeah, it's just that's so great, you know, like he's got like this confidence even though he, you know, can't vocally do what he could do 40 years ago, of course, because nobody can except for Glenn Hughes. But he's pretty much he's the exception that proves the rule, right? So like, but he's got this like playfulness to his lyrics and to his delivery that's really cool, and he's not setting himself up with anything that he can't deliver on. It's really cool.
Right.
But anyway, that is that's Throw My Bones. So next we've got the track Drop the Weapon.
Shouting, working up a sweat, stepping over lines, you know what happened next. More trouble than anyone can use. It's a predetermined thing. You lose your right to choose.
That was Drop the Weapon. Again, starting with another riff, and they're both kind of left channel guitar riffs, and then the keyboards come in and fill it out. What'd you think of Drop the Weapon?
You know, I really one thing about this is I really liked the intro. Not that the rest of the song wasn't good. The rest of the song was a lot more laid back, but the intro was really kind of I want to say like poppy.
Yeah, that ding 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 ding, where he's just
yeah. It sounded like it was going to be kind of like this really cool, like kind of like almost like a 80s style like pop rocker, and then like the fluttering keyboards come in, and it's like, all right, yeah, this is kind of fun and upbeat, and then it just kind of settles into kind of this laid back song with a really cool groove, which I wasn't expecting. So, I mean, I really love the intro. And the song actually, when it gets to the chorus, is actually kind of like a little kind of crunchy, a little heavy.
Yeah.
Which I thought was pretty neat. But yeah, I think it's another good track. I almost kind of wish that like I knew that where the intro went, like if they had kind of stayed on that, but on the other hand,
it's very, very different from the rest of the song.
But that's also on the other hand why like I like songs like that, because they start off one way and then they kind of leave you wanting more like that. Like it drew you in, which is what it was supposed to do.
And they're so tight, like the organ, the guitar, and the bass are all just go ding 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 ding. They're all just playing together in such. I don't know if they're perfect unison. I'd have to listen back to it again, but it's just really kind of interesting the way they're doing. Then you've got those Drop the Weapon, where he's coming in with the backing harmonies again, which Gillan has gotten really comfortable with in, you know, more recent times. He's got that bridge like San Francisco, where the hell do we go? Like all the stuff that he's doing, which is kind of cool. Another great solo by Morse. Like Morse's solos, when you really dig into them on this album and listen to them closely, they're just great. Doing these like little like pentatonic dyads or something, like hitting them with some full strums on the guitar too, not just kind of running up and down the fretboard. And then like Don Airey goes into this almost like carnival like organ solo, and then he kind of goes back to like theme from before. He goes back to like this theme like that sounds really like I can't quite place it, but it's a really great solo by Airey. And of course Airey, every time I listen to anything with Don Airey, I love him even more. And then the ending is very like throwback to me. It sounds like Mark III or Mark IV, which like with the way Paice is doing the ending to the song. And then it ends with this double chorus of these ahs. And then the thing that struck me the first time I listened to this, and I don't remember if we talked about this on the original episode, but Gillan, what are the words to this song? Looking through the E.E. Cummings lyrics here. He says, to someone out there, and then he goes, anyone out there, and his like voice breaks a little. It's like, eh, like it does this little like vocal fry on his voice. And it's like they could have they probably did a bunch of takes on that, and they probably had one that was totally clean, and Gillan could have done that totally clean. But I loved making that they made the choice, like the conscious choice to say his voice like cracks a little bit at the end, but we're going to leave it in because it sounds, it does jump out at you because it's not like the most spit polished, perfect thing you could possibly imagine. But I thought it gave some real character to the song, and it kind of was interesting that they made that decision to do that. To show like, hey, he, just like John Lord would do like a little keyboard thing. He'd make a mistake and then he'd just do the mistake 3 more times and it would sound, oh yeah, you meant to do that. It was kind of that kind of feeling, which was just like showing, Gillan's human, and he's like, and he's probably just like, screw it. I'm whatever, 73, 74 when they were recording this. I don't give a shit. My voice cracks a little bit. I'm leaving it in. I'm going to get to the pub for a beer a little sooner, but it sounded really cool. I like that song. And next up we have We're All the Same in the Dark. All right, John, we're all the same in the dark. We can all agree on that. What do you feel about this song?
This is one that I really like because first of all, the riff is really good. I mean, this is kind of like, it's kind of got that same, syncopated groove, that the first the first couple of songs on the album give you the, it kind of follows like the first track a little bit. You're getting that same kind of groove, which it doesn't mean it doesn't like it sounds like the first song. It's just like, it's all right, this is a cohesive like set of songs from the same album. Like, that's what I get from that. But it's a really cool riff and a cool groove. But then when it goes into the verse, what it really reminds me of is it sounds to me exactly like the Gillan song Dead of Night off of Mr. Universe.
Oh wow, okay.
Because he's a da na 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 na, and it's got that same, honey, you will feel all right. I start singing Dead of Night, which actually I went back and I listened to Dead of Night, and it's like, even though it's, it's heavier and it has a little bit more energy, this isn't that far off. And I mean, you're talking like 40 years and a different band too. But that's what I like about that is like, that's, Gillan, obviously wrote both songs. So, I mean, that's kind of a, we talked about songwriters repeating themselves. And I mean, that's a melody that's, familiar, comfortable to him. And, it immediately struck me and I was like, wow, I really like this. And then I realized why, because it was like one of my favorite songs of Mr. Universe. But another thing that I like on this too is like Gillan's background vocals, which I mean, like whatever, it almost sounds like when they like you do a vocal into like you record a vocal into a keyboard and then you like you hit the keys and it comes out with the perfect like
yeah you mean like, the background ahs like the
yeah I mean those sound like so clean and so perfect, and it's like Gillan sounds great. And I mean whether it was studio magic or whether it was him, I mean with Bob Ezrin, could have been, but either way If it was him just like, doubling or tripling like his vocals, like it sounds great. And I mean, whatever the effect is, it adds to the song. I really like it, and enjoy it. It's just another layer that adds to the song, and it's not complicated either. That's the thing is like, the songs aren't too, bogged down with like stuff.
No,
where
they're
you're
not.
like,
They're not doing anything crazy at all. There's a few like little interesting things, like I think on the first chorus there's no tambourine, and the second chorus they bring in a tambourine and they bring it back on the bridge. So like they do things like that where it's not like so super cookie cutter, but it's like little things that I honestly didn't even notice until I listened to it to prepare like more in depth for this episode. So it's really cool, and I love his. I don't know if I feel like I don't understand bluegrass, but I feel like his Morse's solo almost went into like kind of a bluegrass feel on this. Probably because I don't understand what bluegrass is, so maybe it's not. But it's like kind of like does this blues thing, and then guy goes into like bam, like he's doing these like maybe it's just the fact that he's doing like what sounds like to be finger picking, so that's what is making me think of it. But he does this also clean tone stuff behind Ian's vocals, like he's doing like these little ad libs, in like a blues style, and that's pretty cool. And then overall, like the ending is like a really tight ending that they let the organ roll out, and then Airey kind of rolls off the chord like we just like he rakes his fingers across the keys a little bit, and I think that's really cool. Those little imperfections that can happen when you try to do a holding ending like that, and kind of works really well. But that's we're all the same in the dark, and then lyrically, it's just kind of all discussing what you would call it. I thought I had the lyrics here. Oh well, I can't find them right now. But we're all the same in the dark. Really great, great song, great riff, and that brings us on to the next track, Nothing at All. All right, John, Nothing at All. What do you think?
Well, aside from the image that it conjures up of Ned Flanders in his super sexy ski outfit,
which is what so many of our listeners now associate it with because of the episode. If you don't know what we're talking about, check out was episode number 68 where we talked about this song.
But I still feel that what we had said, that's one of the things that I remember, because this was so distinct, is that we felt like this sounded like a Christmas song.
And I remember when the single came out, Rich had messaged me and said it sounds like a Christmas song, and then I forgot, and then you brought it up on the show, and I was like, oh yeah, you're right. And then he was like, what the hell, I told you about that. And I was like, oh oops, forgot. Sorry, Rich.
But it still does have that vibe. But another one that which I mean, first of all, it's great because it's like it's different, feel it's different, but it's really nice. It's very kind of like soothing, comforting song, but like really, cool, like intro. Again, another laid back track, which is, feels like that's what most of this album is just like, sounds like laid back, everybody's just kind of jamming, nobody's going, too over the top with anything. But that first part, where the guitar and the organ are kind of like, almost like dueling. It gives me that that image, which I don't know if I talked about this before, of fancy, like a fancy, ballroom dancing, people with the big powdered wigs, kind of like, it sounds like really like, what is it, like medieval or turn of the century almost, which kind of connects with Deep Purple's roots. If you think about like the type of music they had started off playing and the keys that they were using were always like,
the word Baroque is coming into my mind.
Yes, that's it. That's
just
it.
Like bluegrass. I don't know if I'm using it properly, but it's the word that kind of springs. Yeah, like I could see,
but that's the emotion it brings
people
out.
In period garb, like dancing at oh my lady.
Yeah, exactly. And you know what? Even if this isn't Baroque or you didn't like technically what you heard isn't bluegrass, like that's what the that's the kind of like the emotion or like the the image that the song evokes, and it's like, whether they mean to do that or not. I feel like they probably do, because I mean, when you have a band that's been around this while for this long, I mean, for a while this long, and they have a producer that's been around this long and musicians that are so great. I mean, it has to be intentional. I mean, at this point, you
Yeah.
don't do anything by accident. And I mean, I think it's a good intentional.
Yeah. To me, that like the musicality between what Morse and Airey are doing, it's so like complicated, but they make it sound so effortlessly. It's just like,
Yeah.
oh, this is just Steve Morse and Don Airey trading off some little things we threw together. And to this, it's been a year and I still can't tell what the hell Steve Morse is doing. Like, I don't know if he's got a delay effect on his guitar. Obviously, without delay, it's something that I would have to practice for a year to be able to play. But it says like, and then Don Airey comes, and I love the fact that Don Airey comes in and doesn't do the exact same thing, but he does something that's like a cousin of it, or that's so similar.
Complimentary of it. Yeah.
And it's just like, oh, here's my take on the little whatever mode or scale that you were using. I'm going to throw in something in the same style and the same general ideas and notes, but it's the same, but yet totally different. And to me, it's just, the first time I heard this, I was more kind of blown away by the fact that it sounded just kind of unexpected.
Mhm.
And then listening to it over time, it's just like, wow, it's just the musicality in it is actually pretty incredible.
Well, the other thing too is that another thing that when you're part of a band that has a legacy like this too, and I was talking about how you don't do anything by accident. I feel like if you listen to that, right, it's like obviously you have Steve Morse, Don Airey. Like I could easily picture Ritchie and John doing that same exchange. Like that's something that really pays like homage to like what the musical homage to like the legacy of Deep Purple's music. So it's like I feel like they were probably sitting around and being like, oh yeah, this is something that like Blackmore and Lord would have done, and but I mean still them being themselves, I mean they honor the history of the band, but without sounding like they're trying to be copycats of the other musicians that were in the band. Like it's still good. It stands on its own. And that's maybe something that a casual listener wouldn't pick up, but we would because we're diehard fans.
Right. And you're so, there's so many people that are always like, oh, it's not the same because Blackmore is not in the, and they're always complaining about it, and it's super tedious. But if you listen to this and you really listen to this album, which is as far removed from Ritchie as any album has ever been, it, like you said, it does stay true to the Deep Purple formula of writing and what they're doing and how the players are interacting, even though from Mark II there's only 3 people that are still in the band, but those 2 main guys who would trade off, which are guitar and organ, are completely different guys, but it's the same. I don't want to say formula because that almost sounds derogatory, but it's the same kind of essence of what the band's always been doing, and that's really cool.
Right. Yeah, but I mean, I think essence is a good. Well, the formula is not terrible either.
Yeah, but I don't want to make it seem like, oh, there's a formula, like they just follow this exact formula to do a song,
Right, because I don't think they really ever did. I mean, even when they were like, cranking out albums in the 70s, I mean, they just sounded like them,
Right. And
so
the song, like lyrically, Ian's talking about, it's definitely a song about Mother Nature. When I hear about the doom and gloom, and he talks about the old lady smiled. I mean, if he's talking about Mother Nature, she blew all the leaves off my tree, and it's like it gives you this real sense of the seasons changing. Like this song to me sounds like fall, like it's a crisp fall day, even though it came out in the dead of summer.
Right.
But it conjures up that kind of feeling of change. And he also talks about kind of, and lyrically, I feel like Gillan is this might be some of his strongest material ever, just as far as what he's saying and how he's saying it. We joke on Gillan all the time for being not subtle and being a little crass and all that stuff, but he's like you talked about, like the essence of his vocals are great, and the essence of his lyrics are also at their peak as well. He might not be able to sing Child in Time like he could in 1972, but at the same time, he's like, I think him and the whole band are showing this maturity and this wisdom that is pretty incredible. So many people again want to write off like, this isn't my Deep Purple, but this is not the same band. This is a band 50 years later showing the maturity and the wisdom that they have as musicians, and knowing what their limitations are and knowing what they're capable of, and putting together something that's like in my mind really special.
You know, you just mentioned something which, it doesn't really go along with the review of the song or anything, but it just made me think of, Gillan doing Child in Time differently with the Ian Gillan band, doing that different arrangement that we talked about a couple of weeks ago.
Yep.
And like, I think the way that, Coverdale a year ago, like, was doing like some acoustic versions of his songs and singing them in the lower register. Yep. I think it would be amazing if they could figure out a way to rearrange Child in Time where they could play it now, because I think that would be wildly creative.
That's really interesting. Yeah, like he did it during a time when he was totally capable of singing it.
Yeah, but I mean, he could
that way, but yeah, like just
they
do
could
something
rearrange
creative,
it. He could, exactly. He could completely do it differently, and it would still be good. Because I mean, I never thought, I'd listen to another version of that song after the original one, and then the Ian Gillan band one came out. I was like, wow, this one is like so cool. But I mean, he still did the high vocals, and I mean, I think it would just be really creative, and he's still such a good vocalist. Like, if there was a way that they could bring that song back, I think people would be so blown away. And I think there's such good musicians, and they could, do an arrangement of it where you just be like, oh my God, like, deep track. I can't believe it. And I would buy it. Like, even if, like, I mean, obviously wouldn't do the high vocals, but if there was a way, like,
but that's
like,
the only part he wouldn't be able to do is the high, like everything. Like, he wouldn't be able to do the screaming vocal. He wouldn't be able. He could maybe do the like, he could maybe do that part. But
if Morse played it on guitar, if Airey did it on keyboard or something like that, if he changed the vocals around and sang it a register lower, something like that, and turned it into like more of a ballad, or I don't know, you know what I mean?
Yeah, well, John Lord was doing that towards the end when they would play it and he couldn't quite hit the notes. He was playing it on the keys, so they could bring that part back and have him do something else. But yeah, that's a good point.
I don't know. I just think that that would be, just to get off on a tangent, like that would be really cool. Like for bands like, that know their limits. Like obviously Gillan isn't hitting any high notes here. Like, Ian Paice isn't doing any, songs like The Mule, at this age, you know what I mean? But they're still kicking ass. And,
imagine if Deep Purple comes back, haven't played a show in like 2 years. They come back and they maybe not open with it, but maybe they open with Highway Star like normal. Then all of a sudden you hear do 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 beep, boo, do, 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 do. The crowd would go nuts, right? I mean, just knowing what was about to come, even if, like you said, they rearranged it a little bit, but if they heard that familiarity of that little keyboard part, that would be crazy.
Oh yeah.
But no, maybe someone in the Deep Purple camp is listening, can pass that along. But anyway, that was
yes, please.
that was Nothing at All.
You stand there on your soapbox without fear, like a chanting, one-demented auctioneer.
No Need to Shout. Always the title that always just makes me think of that what was it on SNL, that John Lovitz thing? Well, you don't have to shout, or you don't need to yell. You don't need to yell.
I can't
He's
remember.
like a really he's like annoying character with like this like really whiny voice, and somebody finally yells at him. He's like, you don't need to yell.
Oh, I can't remember.
I don't apparently remember it either. I don't even know what he says, but it makes me think of that. So anyway, No Need to Shout. obviously starts off with this organ that sounds almost like you're listening to Perfect Strangers. They just it sounds like the same kind of thing, and then
that's what I thought.
It goes past that pretty quick, but
the riff reminds me of something, but I can't, like, I've been thinking about it like for I don't know how long, and that one I can't put my finger on, but it's like it's a riff that's reminiscent of something. Oh wait, I think I did, right? Stormbringer, that's it.
Oh yeah,
and I think we said that. Yeah. See, I knew it. Like,
you might have brought that up on last year's episode.
Yeah, which I thought was really interesting. That, you know, basically, like one of these people were in the band at the time. But I mean, that's a good, like, that's a good driving riff. But I mean, you know, it's like I said, reminiscent, not really like a rip. So I mean, its song stands on its own.
No, but it's pretty close. You're right. And then so he's going to da, like, so during the verse he's doing this kind of droning guitar, and then Don Airey's going bam bam, and he's doing this little, again, this like roll off the organ, which is really cool.
Yeah.
It's like the guitar solo, I feel like, comes in like really unexpectedly and kind of surprise you, and then it does this bam bam bam. They keep doing this like dun dun dun, and that was bothering me like crazy until I realized it was Frankenstein by the Edgar Winter Group. Bam 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 da na na. I kept expecting them to go into that, but they do it a few times. These like 3 ascending chords, and it made me think of Frankenstein after like racking my brain to figure it out.
Right.
And then he does this in the bridge section again. Gillan like really comfortable on the vocals, and he just goes blah blah blah, which I think is funny. And he's doing a lot. He's very like giggly and laughy at the first part of the song. He's like yeah, he's like just laughing after every line.
It sounds like James Brown or something. He's like ha, huh.
He's just, but it's like this comfort level that I just really appreciate. He's just like, man, I've been doing this for 60 years. Like, I don't care what anybody thinks. I'm comfortable. I don't need the money. I don't need to prove anything. I love the fact that they're all at this place where they just don't have anything to prove. They don't have anything to lose. They can just do whatever they want. They know they're not going to sell, you know, it's not going to be a gold record right out the gate. They're going to play to their fans and have a blast. And there's just something really refreshing about that.
Mm-hmm.
They're credited. And then he's got that classic line that made us kind of laugh because we heard it for the first time during the last episode. Is he's like, "What a bunch of trash you've got exuding from your ass." It's just kind of a funny line. It kind of just caught us off guard. Airey does this piano, so he does this. They do this great guitar solo, goes on Airey taking over, and then he throws in like a little Gershwin, like Rhapsody in Blue, and he kind of does that, and then they go back into the Gillan thing, and then they have a couple of female backing singers, Ayanna George and Tiffany Palmer, who do backing vocals on this, and it really livens up the song. And there's somewhere you can't tell, is that Gillan doing harmony, or is that several of them doing harmony? But on this one it seemed pretty obvious, like, oh, they've got female backing singers, and I'm a big fan of female backing singers. You know, always, especially in this kind of context, I think it works really well. So it's a great track. It closes out this. So they don't do, obviously it came out on CD, or I guess kind of came out on record, but it's divided up into 2 acts instead of sides. You know, they're just kind of going, it's kind of a throwback. So this is the next song is the end of Act 1, and then they go into Act 2. So for what that's worth, on a CD it doesn't matter, you just listen to them all in a row. So
right.
That was No Need to Shout. All right, John, Step by Step. What do you think of that one?
This one I think is a really moody, atmospheric type of song, which I think mostly because of Don Airey with the, the intro and his, his interlude between the verses and everything really makes me think of like something off of like self-titled Deep Purple, like Mark One.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Maybe like it just, I don't know, maybe it's because of the organ, especially like the solo and like the outro and everything, maybe because John,
like all those
like
interludes in April or something.
yeah, I was
Yeah,
gonna
yeah.
say April because John Lord used that, like, almost sounded like a church organ.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that really just kind of throws back to that a little bit, which makes me kind of like those parts of the song.
Yeah. I mean, this was one of those ones that, well, it starts off with that like very gothic sounding organ, and it
Right.
sounds to me, it reminds me, is no surprise composition wise, of like Mr. Crowley, like this like very dark, moody sort of introduction, that does kind of come back later as a theme, unlike the intro to Mr. Crowley, but I love that intro. It's like this, and it's the whole song's got the 6/8 time, but it throws you off with these like kind of like these late hits and late beats, which I really really like. And then the verse is very like, it's just a very almost disturbing song with everything going on. You've got these oohs and ahs that sound like they're maybe done by the ooh like it sounds like it's being played by the keyboard, which very well could be. And then Gillan's got this delay on his vocal, so everything he's saying is slapping back at you. Um, but overall, like the more I listen to it, the more I think this might be my favorite track on the album. And the that little, it's it's only a 3.5 minute song, but to me in my mind it seems longer because it's got this first instrumental break that doon 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 doon. So it goes into that thing, and then it comes back later as a little bit more intricate, with the organ being a little bit more involved, and then goes into that one of the coolest organ solos I've heard that Don Airey is doing with all of it. It's got this, it's got all this delay built into it. It's very, um, um, it's very just kind of tap. He's just very like, sounds like he's very sharply touching the keys, but there's not a ton of sustain on it. But yet you've got these delays happening. And then by the end of the song, when it comes back a third time, it sounds like everything's breaking down. Like the drums are getting, there's more delay on things. The drums are getting more frantic. It sounds like there's like this kind of reverb on the drums. The snare drum's super compressed, and you're just hearing these like whacks of the snare drum. And then Morse does a solo, which is awesome. But yeah, I mean, I think this song is great. I really dig it.
Yeah, it's definitely, I wouldn't say it's one of the best songs on the album, but it's a standout because it's, like I said, it's has such an atmosphere about it.
And a great like wrap up to that first side of the album. And then you've got the, lyrically, I don't know exactly what he's talking about, moving on through the graveyard shift and no way out, and stay in line, never dance alone. He talks about holding on to a bag of bones. Maybe those are the bones he's throwing, I don't know. But it's kind of an interesting, so hard reading these lyrics the way they're written out. But yeah, it's a really really cool song. And of course, we got a cast member from Step by Step to comment on our 100th show, thanks to this song. So I'll forever be grateful. And what I think we also were formulating was this: is this a New Kids on the Block cover? Before we listened to it, we saw that, but turns out, sadly, it's an original. Sorry, everybody.
Sadly,
it's not a New Kids on the Block cover. But that is Step by Step.
Sadly, for every 14-year-old girl in 1988, it's not a cover of the New Kids.
Maybe next time. Maybe they might have another album left in them. We can only hope. All right, John, are you ready to talk about the next track?
Yes. What is it?
Well, I'm not going to tell you yet because first we have to thank our core level patrons.
Oh,
Coming in at the $6.66 tier, we have Richard Fusey, Steve Coldwell, and Arthur Smith. At the $6.65 almost evil tier, we have Kenny Wymore. At the $5.99 nice price tier, we have Fielding Fowler and Dr. Jill Brees. At the $5 money lender tier, Greg Sealby, John Convery, German Heindel, Adrian Hernandez, Jesper Alman, Alexei the Perfect Stranger Slepikov, James North, Mark Hodgetts, Kev Roberts, Will Porter, Zwapper the Electric Alchemist, and Tim Southern Cross Johnson. And at the $3 Nobody's Perfect tier, Peter Caldor Gardeau, Ian DeRosier, Mark Roback, Anton Glaving, Andrew Meyer, Duncan Leask, and of course, Stuart McCord. Thank you to all of you so much for your support of the Deep Purple podcast. We really appreciate it. All right, on to the next track, which is What the What?
We're going out tomorrow, we're gonna do it right. To celebrate the fact that we're still alive. In that case, we better make it tonight. I drink for us all and you can drive. My mojo working, I paid my dues. I'm gonna break out my dancing shoes. I'm gonna do what I do best. I'm gonna spend my money till there's nothing.
All right, what the what? What the what do you think about that, John?
what the what do I think? Oh, these are the same old tired jokes we probably told a year ago.
Well, if you listen to the last year's episode, it's like all the same materials. Like there's no need for these two jabronis to revisit anything. They said all the same stuff.
Jabronis. Jabroni.
We'll revisit In Rock next week, and we'll make all these witty jokes and be all the same crap we said 2 years ago. All right.
So I feel like I said this about this song too, but it, like in the last episode we did on Whoosh, was that this sounds like one of those like throwback rockers that like could have been on a Gillan Glover solo album.
Yeah. Oh, good call.
It's
good
like
call if that's the first time you said that. And still if it's the second.
Still a good call if I said it, which I feel like I did. But you know why? A lot of it too is because it's like it's got that same kind of like it's got that same kind of like production. His voice sounds the same. And this is like 1988.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And I mean,
of Accidentally on Purpose or something.
Yes, Accidentally on Purpose. And I mean his voice and like the effect on his voice was like the same. And it's kind of got the same
like a
energy.
Slapback reverb sort of thing.
Yeah. That really like, trying to go for that, like kind of like 50s, 50s rocker, but recorded with like an 80s flair on it. So it's like, I think it's pretty good. I mean, again, it's like, it reminds me of something that, they'd already done, but it's, a positive thing.
Mm-hmm.
So I like it. Once again, not, probably like, the best song on the album, but it's pretty good. For most of the songs here on out, like it's just, I take the album as a whole. So, I don't really distinguish too much between all the other songs.
Yeah. I mean, on this one, it's, it starts off with this dun 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 dun. It sounds off this like
sounds like a like Highway Star.
Yeah, almost. When I do it like that, I guess. Then it just turns into a standard 12-bar blues song. It's the standard kind of blues throwaway song. On an album like this, the album's 51 minutes long. Did we need to have this track? I mean, I think if there's one track that could go, this would be the one for me. It's well done blues rocker, but it's been done a million times before. Did we need it again? And to me, it doesn't feel like it fits in with like a lot of the themes and things that they're doing on this album. He does have the great line though: every bar in London had an old Joanna and cats who could play rock and roll piano, which I enjoyed. It's very like Zappa kind of changing although in the lyrics book here it says piano, and I contest that. He clearly says piano. I find it funny that these guys in their 70s wrote a song like "What the What," which is kind of like a new-ish phrase. Like my kids say that, they're like, "What the what?" You know, so to hear them writing a song with that phrase is just kind of weird. I think they've got, you know, it's rock, it's reminiscing about old time rock and roll bars and all that sort of stuff. So obviously they're I can get that. The piano solo jumps around, but it never really leaves this like kind of standard blues progression. The guitar solo is playing it a little bit more safe. It starts to stray a little bit from the blues pattern, but then just kind of falls right back into it. It's a short and sweet song, 3.5 minutes once again, standard blues ending. And I think overall, like the energy of the band and everyone's putting in 110%. But to me, it's kind of not a song that needed to be done. I think it could have been left on the cutting room floor. When you've got a 13th bonus track, like I figure that could have been a non-bonus track, and this one could have just been like, okay, well, we don't need it. But that's just my take, and that is What the What.
Get me down, I got the things of looking up blues. I know it happens, but it never sticks to my shoes. It's been a long time coming.
Okay, The Long Way Round. John, what do you think about that one?
Another good one, another good riff. You know, a really good chugging riff.
Yeah,
yeah, I really like that. Almost like Flight of the Rat type of thing. You know, our Hard Loving Man.
Oh, yeah.
But when I hear, like, you know, now it's songs like this where I hear, you know, a little bit more of the you know, slick production. You know, a song like this, I think, like, you know, how cool would that be if it were a little more raw, you know, raw produced.
Yeah, that's true. It is very polished.
Yeah. Yeah. I guess. Yeah. I think, like you were saying before, you don't want it to sound derogatory. So I don't mean slick in that way, but yeah, polished. Like if it were less polished. But I mean, it's still, you know, still good. Yeah, there's definitely some good elements in there. You know, great, you know, Don Airey solo. I love it when they, you know, uses different effects just aside from, like, you know, the Hammond, you know, the organ sound. You know, stuff that's like really reminiscent of you know, what John Lord would do in Stormbringer, you know.
Yeah. It's I like this track a lot. I think it's a really interesting arrangement. I talked about this last year on that episode, but the bam 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 bam, it sounds so much like the Billy Joel, like, darling, I don't know why I go to extremes. It made me, like, I remember during the episode trying to figure out what is that reminding me of, and I finally did. Which is kind of weird. I find like the chorus is maybe like the weakest part of the song, in my opinion. I really like the verse, and I really like that little descending bong, and they kind of end on that, and then they go into the next part, and they end on it a second time, and I believe a third time to end the song. And I think that's really, really cool. I think Airey's using this like monophonic sort of synth to do this like, he comes out of nowhere with the solo, just kind of like, it sounds like it's like spiraling down a hill, and then he just does this really cool it must be probably some sort of moog or something, where he does this really cool solo. Guitar solo is like the standard like staccato chromatic runs by Morse, but really well done. You mentioned it's reminiscent of the Mule, that kind of
yeah, da na 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 na,
yeah,
na na. Yeah, little,
and it does kind of have some of that feeling.
A little bit.
Uh,
I'm picking up a lot more of those, like, you know, whether they're intentional or not, nods to classic Deep Purple, which I think are really nice.
Yeah, and it's like I don't I don't imagine they're even conscious nods. I think it's just like we were talking about earlier. It's that essence of the band showing itself. And that might be more what we're hearing. One thing that I know we got crap for not mentioning this the first time we covered this album. I have to find the exact line in the lyrics book here, but Gillan says, God, this is so hard to read. Oh yeah. I promised myself I would not get trashed again. So it's kind of reference to the song Trash.
Yeah.
And so many people are like, you guys didn't mention it. And we're probably just talking over it while he said it. It didn't even notice.
Well, we're mentioning it now.
Yeah, exactly. We're making good. But yeah, it's kind of an interesting little lyrical thing that he does there. And yeah, so it picks back up with this towards the end of the song, but the ending of the song is really one of the more haunting parts of the album, when the synth it ends on like a synth pad kind of ringing out. There's like these leads with like this Morse is playing these heavy like reverb leads over it. Ian Paice is just kind of hitting the cymbals and as accents, all that sort of stuff. And then Airey hits this pad and a chord, and then you must use like the pitch bend to just go and just bends the entire chord down. And then it goes from this really peaceful ending where you can almost kind of hear like chirping birds and all sorts of stuff to oh my God, we're descending into the pits of hell by the way that he bends the chord down. And then it goes into the next track right straight from that, which kind of makes a lot of sense. So so that is The Long Way Around. And that's The Power of the Moon, baby. What do you think of The Power of the Moon, John? Does it compel you?
The power of Christ compels me.
What about The Power of the Moon? What does it do to you?
It scares me. This sounds like a horror movie soundtrack. You got the Halloween theme going on there. Dun 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 dun. That same kind of like almost staccato type of thing going on. So it's very eerie sounding.
Very airy sounding.
Hey.
Well, you know what I said? I said? What I remember saying, and I'm knowingly going to repeat myself, is it reminds me of the beginning of Unsolved Mysteries.
Oh.
Which scares the shit out of me, because when that show was on as a kid, that really freaked me out. And that that whole thing, and just Robert Stack coming out and just scaring the bejesus out of you every week.
Yeah.
And one of those episodes, if you remember, was about an unsolved murder in my own town, like right down the street from me. So that was like, and actually they helped solve the murder. So it was like really kind of, it was really weird, because everybody, it was this like quote unsolved murder, yet everyone in town like knew who had done it, but they just wouldn't do anything about it. And then like this came on, and like, I guess we gotta arrest the guy now. They're making a big stink out of it. So they arrested him, and his niece was in my school. And I remember the next day in school, her uncle had gotten arrested, and she was in tears and everything. I was just being like, oh boy, this is not good. But It was scary. It was like this woman in her basement that got like, she got hit with like a lead pipe and just brutally murdered. It was horrible. So like as a kid, like this is my memory of being terrified, was like the Unsolved Mysteries. And the first time I heard this, it gave me that like chill up my spine, like, oh no, it's Unsolved Mysteries. Probably too much about Unsolved Mysteries and not enough about this song.
Yeah, that's thanks, Nate. Anyways, and the killer is still at large.
The killer has been, I wonder if he's still in jail. I'll have to look that up after the show.
Boy.
Oh boy. I mean, that
Oh
was
boy.
30 plus years ago. So
I might be living down the street from me now, for crying out loud.
He's your next door neighbor.
Oh, geez.
He's like, I got to get out of this city. I'm going to the next town over.
Just completely unrelated. Like, I don't know why I didn't mention this earlier, because this is very notable. So I live on the second floor, and
Yep.
my dining room table is next to the window. I have a big, sliding window.
Yep.
My dining room. So, I look out and there's the woods over there. And my neighbor from upstairs is she's kind of an oddball. So she's walking by, and she's always like, I don't know if she's got a wallet chain or something, but you always know when she's walking around because you hear that clinking of the keys. Sure. And so I hear the clinking, and I look out there, and she's walking around, and this is a couple of hours ago, so it's still, light out, dinner time, like in a nightgown, the sundress or something, and she's like holding a friggin' Mr. Bill doll.
No, that's scary.
And her hair is like wet and stringy, and she's just kind of walking around like she's possessed. And I'm like, this is the shit that like horror movies like are made of here. Like, should I be afraid right now? Like, is she going to climb up the trellis and try and murder me?
The answer is yes. You should be afraid. That's terrifying.
Yes, it was. Like, when I first of all, I haven't seen a Mr. Bill doll since I was in like grade school. And then why the hell is this woman carrying it? She's at least in her 30s. So
yeah, does she even know who Mr. Bill is?
I just think she ain't quite right.
Yikes. Well, that's the scariest thing yet. That's way scarier than any unsolved murders.
Yeah, because my murder could be unsolved pretty soon, so be careful. Like,
well, no, I think it'll be solved. If you turn up dead tomorrow, I'm gonna be like, I know who did it. There's a woman that lives next to him. Search their apartments. Whoever's got a Mr. Bill doll did it. They'll be like, what? I'm like, trust me. I've just cracked this case wide open, baby. It's the Mr. Bill doll lady.
Who's gonna walk in and see me? Oh no!
Oh no!
I used to think that was so funny.
I mean, if I could get off topic, I'm gonna talk about the song for a little bit, but this is Gillan's most affected vocal so far. It's got this like really powerful flange, like it sounds like almost watery, like aquatic. This like kind of reverb and well, maybe not reverb, but definitely flange. He sings Power of the Moon, and then you go into this really cool little pacey, super light touch fill. Like any other drummer would have overplayed that, but Pacey's just like, he's like, took it down, and he hits the drums like dynamically, just perfectly to go into the next thing. He doesn't overdo it, and it's just really masterfully done. Again, showing the age and wisdom of someone who's been in bands and recording for the better part of 60 years. Mm-hmm. The bridge section leads into this really haunting, like Morse guitar solo, like where he's like he's just doing these little like slides up on the guitar, which are really cool. And then it moves into this new section to break up the Morse solo. And then Airey comes in with this Hammond solo, which is really nice. At least I believe it's a Hammond solo. And then there's this chorus backing section with Morse kind of hitting these chords. And then I think like the end synth organ part kind of tricks you. It makes it seem like the song's ending, but then it just goes right back into the Unsolved Mysteries part with Roger's bass. Like he's just like dum, 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 dum. He's really just plugging away at the bass, and the song doesn't end. It just it doesn't end. It goes into that part, and then kind of slowly fades out. So really, I think this is this might be my second most favorite song on the album. Again, which would not hold up to the ratings we gave it last year, but in unrepeated listens, I think even though it's kind of scary and haunting, it's like so many other parts of this album, it's really done well. Mm-hmm. So that is The Power of the Moon. All right, so that's so remission possible. This is a very brief minute and a half interlude where um, about 30 seconds of it are fade out. But what do you think about the tone of this little? It's called a separate track, but really to me it just kind of sounds like it's a, like we've seen so many times. It should be kind of almost just the introduction to the next track, Man Alive. What do you think about it?
Right. I think it's pretty cool. I like I like it's kind of like a dark, kind of heavy, keyboard heavy instrumental. So, I think it's a cool, it's a cool little thing.
It starts off with this like really dirty sounding bom, 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 like really, really low. And it sounds almost like, is this a, I think what it is like a really overdriven organ or synth, but it almost sounds like a guitar, but he's just doing these like, I don't know if he's just plucking out single notes or if he's doing dyads or chords or whatever. I don't know.
Right.
And then all of a sudden it just kind of breaks into this frantic like sprint where the guitar is joining in unison with like some other organ, and then the full band joins in. So the guitar kind of starts branching out and playing, like picking off these notes, like he's picking out these notes, and it kind of reminds me of this song by Dream Theater, Stream of Consciousness, where like Petrucci's doing this like kind of like crazy like rhythmic thing like that while there's an organ solo going on, but it's kind of has that same tone to it. And then the guitar and organ do this very complicated like unison staccato like 16th notes or 32 notes, I don't know. And then it just all of a sudden that like 50 seconds into the song, it just kind of like boom, after this frantic thing just kicked off, it kind of gets into the stratosphere, it just all stops and holds this organ notes, and the guitar is doing like he's strumming chords or notes and swelling them in, fading them in and out, and then it just kind of fades into Man Alive, the next track, which we'll talk about. But that's Remission Possible. And our next up, we'll be talking about what they do in what this ends up being the song proper, which is Man Alive.
Sunsets in the west. Boy has gone to rest.
All right, Man Alive. My cousin Jeff always used to say that, Man Alive. I always think of that him when I think of the song. I don't know where you got that. It's like an old lady expression. Man alive.
Man alive. There's a man alive over there. Oh.
That's so shocking. What do you mean, man alive? There's a dead man over there.
Yeah, me with a Mr. Bill doll shoved up my ass.
Oh, that'd be a terrible way to go.
Oh no. I don't
know. So Man Alive. This is a kind of a weird one.
Yeah. It definitely falls under the umbrella for me personally of something that I can appreciate, the complexity of it and the production, because like it's of course very sounds great, but I dare say a little self-indulgent.
Yeah, for sure.
Little
it's like
complex.
It's kind of like the weirdest stand thing he does, like.
Yeah, the whole spoken word thing. It's like I've never really been a huge fan of that type of thing. But that being said, like I said before, I think it's it's another song. I think it's very measured. It's a, what is it, like 5 minutes?
Yeah, it's kind of it's 5.5 minutes, so it's one of the longer songs. And I like you, the first time I heard the spoken word part, like I was like, oh, I don't think I'm gonna like this. It starts off with this the string patch effect, like it almost sounds like I don't know what it reminds me of, that string intro just kind of sounds like, what am I thinking of? Like it seems like a commercial that you'd hear in a movie, like welcome to such
Yeah.
and such place, like a science fiction,
Yeah.
utopia sort of thing, like welcome to Pleasant World, where everyone is happy all the time, and then
And
things are going to go
pleasant.
bad.
And
But
very
yeah,
pleasant.
when I heard that spoken word, I was just like, oh no. But then when he kicks into the, oh, creatures great and small, like I was like, okay, he kind of reeled me back in on that part. And then you've got this, he says like the sunsets in the west. He's got this heavy, affected electronic vocal. The drums, it sounds like at first like it's like, oh, I'm listening to drums just doing a rim shot, but then you notice it's like two different tones, so it sounds like a clock ticking, like instead of just a typical just
Yeah.
single tone rim shot. So then
Yeah.
I'm like, wait, is that actually a rim shot, or are they doing two rim shots on purpose? Is it some sort of effect? I don't know, but it's definitely, the atmosphere that the song creates is really, really interesting for sure. Um, uh, they're doing this like, you know, ding 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 ding. He's doing these like little finger picked accents on the guitar. There's just so much going on. Just really good drum fills by Pace. Um, yeah, the breakdown kind of again reminds me of another something else, like some other Dream Theater song off of. I don't know why I'm not the hugest Dream Theater guy, but it's really interesting. Uh, I like I like when he's talking in his spoken word part. What does he say? Um, he's talking about the crap. Where is it? I can't find it. He's talking. He at one point he mentions the wisest guys. He's like, the wisest guys, and for some reason that just cracks me up because it's like just a funny thing to say. Where is it? He says, oh yeah, fewer than the smallest imaginable intake of breath. The wisest guys in the evolution of humanity became extinct. That's just a funny thing to say. I don't know why. But it's just overall, yeah, it is kind of an odd song, but some really interesting musical parts. And then of course he says whoosh at the end, and that's the big reveal, like, aha, the album
Yeah.
title.
Yeah. I
Aha.
thought it was kind of heavy handed
Yeah, for sure.
a
all
little
the
bit.
spoke all the spoken word stuff is very heavy handed on this. um there's this one, he goes man alive, and then it goes, Roger does this like doo 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 doo. It reminds me of something like Roger Waters does on The Wall. It's just very like this little descending bass line to end a phrase, which is kind of cool.
No,
And
it's
then at
kind
the
of funny because you're talking about Pink Floyd, and the very beginning of the song made me think of something off Animals.
Oh yeah, which song? Like what part of it? Like the
Oh boy, I can't.
oh,
It
it
was
might have been.
the very beginning where he kind of had that like that creepy kind of like synth
Oh, it
voice
sounds
kind
like
of
when he's
sounding
doing
thing.
the Lord is my shepherd,
Yeah,
when they're
yeah,
doing that with like that really heavy effect on the voice. Yeah, that's a good call. It sounds like a
yes,
similar kind of weird processed vocal.
right.
That's a good call. Don't often think of Pink Floyd and Deep Purple being uh, very similar, but those are two kind of similarities.
Hmm.
And then the end, he does that whoosh part, and there's like almost like this accordion sounding organ in the background. Um, some really heavily filtered synth parts, and then it just a long, slow fade out of the song, and that's kind of the end of the album proper, as it were. And that's that, my friends, is Man Alive. And the address. Oh my goodness. So this is kind of a bit of a jarring change from that really, like you said, kind of heavy-handed, heavily affected thing to go back to this 60s throwback to their first track on their first album. Boom, they just throw this on at the almost at the end here. So what do you think about that The transition alone is a little odd, but what do you think
Yeah.
about this version of And the Address?
I think it's great. I mean, it sounds fresh.
It
Sounds
does for a song that's
fresh from the bakery.
at this point was 52 years old. They
Yeah.
dig up this old fossil and somehow make it sound like
Yeah.
exciting and new.
Yeah. I mean, they like, again, I think they do it with a really, kind of measured, way about it. You could just, I don't know, you can tell by listening to the album, whether it's the production or the way that they're playing or everything together, that it's like everything is like they're playing everything very intentionally. They're really like, they're really watching their tempo, and they're like playing everything very intentionally. Like it almost and I know that, like, Bob Ezrin is like, historically like a very, they would call him the taskmaster producer. He'd have everything like, on a click track type of thing, and like, be very precise with things. And so it's like, you can tell it's very reined in from the original, but I mean, it sounds great. It fits in with the album, like the sound, and like, it's just great to hear the jam. It brings you back, to the, another connection to the, the history of the band.
It sounds like this song, along with so much of the other songs on the album, it sounds so effortless, like for them, like the playing, it sounds almost like they're holding back, or they're just like, we're not going to show you our full power. We're just going to, we don't need to. We have, these are, again, 5 guys who have nothing to prove to anybody. And they're putting out a really solid album, and just, again, they're not phoning it in. They're playing things that most people wouldn't be able to play at all, but they're at like 75%. They're not like, I'm not going to do the fastest, craziest solos or fills or everything. I'm going to just do something really measured that works perfectly for the song, is still really musically interesting and complicated and all that. But if I put it up to 300%, I wouldn't be able to do any of this. And they're just kind of dialed back. They're just, we're just gonna, and it did sound like there was a lot of Ezrin was holding like Morse back and trying to make him play a little slower and stuff like that. Which is, when you listen to his solos on this album, like, really, like, he wanted to go more than what he did, because the solos are insane on this album. They're so good. So yeah, it's really interesting. And like you said, fresh. It's the perfect ending to wrap up the album, wrap up the band. And I think my only complaint about this is that they didn't make it the last song on the album, which still drives me insane.
Yeah. Yeah, as far as I'm concerned, it is.
They claim, oh, no, the last song's a bonus track. It's like, that's baloney. This is the first version of the album that came out has the bonus track. It's not a bonus track.
Yeah.
Find me a version of this album that doesn't have the bonus track on it. It doesn't exist. So it's not a bonus track. It's the last song.
Right.
So that kind of makes me crazy. And I like the last song. It's a good song. But to me, they should have just lose that bonus track nonsense. It's not a bonus track, and make this be the last song. Replace What the What with Dancing in My Sleep, and then end with And the Address. Problem solved. The whole album's perfect in that. But hey, who am I? I'm no Bob Ezrin.
Nah, you're just some so-and-so with a podcast.
Well, that is true.
Well, wait a minute. So am I. Never mind.
Neither of us, we're both no Bob Ezrin. Neither of us. Didn't he sell his entire catalog for like 1.2 billion or something?
I don't know.
Something ridiculous. He sold it was a couple of years ago. The Bob Ezrin catalog. I don't even know how that works when you're a producer, but yeah, he doesn't need any advice from us. It's just, but as a fan, it just kind of, that's the only thing that kind of irks me, is just like, it's like you almost tied it together with a bow, but then you just dropped it at the end.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's And the Address. Next up, we have Dancing in My Sleep. All right. So Dancing in My Sleep. John, what do you think about this track?
It threw me off a little bit at first because it started off like, you know, Deep Purple's doing dance music. You
Yeah,
know,
there's someone that gets credit on the album, and let me look it up real
yeah.
quick, for programming. So this obviously it's a programmed
Ah,
synth. So Sam Hashimi, I believe. Sorry if I'm pronouncing that wrong. He did the programming on Dance My Sleep. So it's got that. It's
right. Which it sounds like it kind of like it's, you know, it repeats through, like if you hear, you can hear some of it under, like I think some of the verses or the chorus
yep.
or whatever. But yeah, as it goes on, it picks up, it gets you know, it's pretty catchy. But I mean, in line with the rest of the album, you know, it's like when I'm listening to it, I was like bopping my head and like, you know, like, yeah, this is good, but then found myself saying, okay, this is the last song, and it's like you know, indistinguishable from like a few of the other songs on the album because they all have that same kind
Mm,
of
yeah.
momentum, which is you know, not an insult at all. It's just I think that, you know, this is one of these, you know, albums that I listen to as an album. You know, it
Yeah.
works as
Same.
like an entirety. So, you know, I don't know if there are too many songs I would like pick out and just be like, yeah, I'm gonna put this on now and listen to it or whatever. But you know, and I think that might be another, you know, Bob Ezrin thing because he's, you know,
Yeah.
everything's always been a concept, or a lot of his albums been concept album with him. Is that you can tell? I feel like this album is meant to be listened to as a whole.
Yeah. And I think that's what I really like about this album. I'm a big album guy. I like listening to complete albums, and this one really works really well. Apart from and this song, apart from the complaint I have about it being called a bonus track and being the last song, I really like it. That beginning synth programming part sounds just like it was on the soundtrack of this video game that me and Paul used to play all the time called Star Control 2.
Yeah.
It just sounds every time I hear the first time I heard it, I was just like, this sounds like it's right off of that soundtrack. I think this has got I love Roger's bass on this. Like he just he's
Oh
really
yeah,
just
yeah.
plugging along. It's one of the, in my opinion, is one of his best lines on this album, and maybe in on any Glover Deep Purple albums. I just really think it's one of the standouts. It's awesome. Um, he does this guitar riff to end the first verse solo before going into the second verse. Um, there's synth strings in the chorus. At least I think there's synth strings. I don't see any string players credited. And then that, like you mentioned before, that programming, that little synth program is kind of going throughout the whole song. There's a couple times when the band kicks out and it's still going in the background, or the band gets quiet and it's still going in the background. But there's also a
Mhm.
couple times the band cuts out and you don't hear it. So it's interesting, but it seems like it's that driving force. It starts the song, it ends the song. Um, and then I like his kind of like, don't you like my fancy footwork? It sounds like that's like a real like throwback, like Ian Gillan. I could see him doing that with Ian Gillan band or with early 70s Purple, just like one of those kind of lines like that. I think the
Mhm.
solo by Airey is awesome. He goes into these like really crazy, almost discordant sound, like he's just like, you could see him hitting one key with like both hands, just like doing these really rhythmic sort of slapping onto these chords. Um, and then Morse takes over for the second solo, and it's probably one of his like the dirtier sounding tones that he's had on the album. And then you've got these backing singers doing the Dancing in My Sleep, and then Gillan once again is kind of like on, what song did I mention it on earlier, where the second song where his voice cracks a little. He does this like, oh, and it kind of like, again, is like, it's not perfect, but that's what's good about it. It's got this like
Mhm.
really cool character to it.
Yeah.
um and then and there's one part in the song where they're playing, and Ian Pace, it sounds like he just stops, like he thinks the song's over, and then he's like, oh shit, and he keeps then he jumps right back in. Like, I don't know if that was a mistake, if it was intentional, if they just like thought it was part of the arrangement, I don't know. But it's, that part always kind of stuck out to me. It's kind of funny, and then it just goes
Mhm.
back into the programming part, and it kind of fades out. But I think it's I've gotten used to it being the closer on the album with that little programming thing trailing off at the end, but I can't help but think, wouldn't it be cool if they ended with "And the Address"?
Yeah, still,
Unchanged
but
from a year ago.
but you know, who are we? We're not
But
Bob
they didn't.
Ezrin.
I haven't sold my catalog at all. Not even for double digits or single digits. I've sold it for 0 bupkis. So who am I? All right. So that's our take on Whoosh.
A year later.
A year later, but yeah, I gotta say, um, I like it more and more every time I hear it, and it's definitely something I've given a couple dozen listens to over the past year, and will continue to do so. It's really at this point I feel like I've heard it more than any of the other Morse era stuff. Perpendicular I listened to quite a few times, like especially when it first came out, and I've listened to it on and off here and there, but yeah, this album's been a real treat. I'm glad it's there to represent the band, whether it's their last album or not. Who knows? We will never know.
Well, eventually we'll know.
Yeah, that's true. We will eventually know. Right now we don't know. Although the rumor is they're doing another album, so we'll see. Since they had nothing else to do for the past year. And with that, we have nothing else to do except the most important thing of all, which is to thank our foundation level patrons coming in at the $1 made up name tier. We have Els Murders, Spacey Noodles, the Untightened Leaky Mausoleum, not Lacey, Michael Vader, Steven Somerville, the Concerto 1999 Fanatic, Raf Calf, Spike the Rock Cat, JJ Stenard, Hank the Tank, and Flight of the Rat Bat Blue Light. Thank you to all of you wonderful patrons for making the Deep Purple podcast possible. We couldn't do it without you. All right, my friend. What do you think? That's another one in the bag, huh?
Another one in the books, or another. Right. Yeah. Yeah, we're going to break up now. And I think you stopped saying that.
I did, but now you just put it back in my head. We had a little bit of a hiatus between episodes, although for you it will be seamless. And it looked like I had kind of completely gotten out of that little tick I had, and now it's come back thanks to John.
Oh boy. Well, we'll say it's another one in the rebooks, because we've already booked it, and now we opened it up and we rebooked it, and now we've shelved it again.
There you go. Book 'em, Dano.
Yeah. So I would say overall, I'd say I like this album as much as I did before. Maybe a little bit of a, more appreciation of it, after, sitting with it for a while. Although I will admit that I have not listened to it as much as you. Actually, I probably haven't listened to it all the way through since last year.
Yeah.
I mean, there's just no secret that I'm like, I'm just into heavier music,
So I've heard.
I'm heavy, and if you don't get heavier, I'm leaving the show.
That's right. We've had a number of concerned listeners. I guess we should address this. After the Bobby Harrison Funkist episode, concerned listeners that John was going to leave the show, and people even offering suggestions of albums we could do to win John back. I'm like, guys, maybe it's just the fact that I've known you for 30 plus years. I was like, no, he's not mad. I don't think he's mad. He just wasn't as into the album as I was. It's gonna be okay. It's like if we didn't come back the next week with Holy Diver, like you were out.
Yeah, exactly. I was just going to be on and be like, Nate, I'm sick of these wimpy albums. I ain't no poser.
Exactly.
I am leaving this poser ass podcast.
And I was thinking, man, there's some albums there's some music that John's really into that I can remember from back in the day that would probably surprise some of our listeners. So I'm like, don't worry, it's okay. It doesn't need to be heavy.
No, I'm diverse. It's just
I won't say any of the artists or albums on the air. That's up to you whether you want to bring anything up, but I was like, I can think of some albums he listened to back in the day where it's like, yeah, trust me, it's not all about heavy with John.
Now I'm like curious of like, you think that I'd be embarrassed, but I don't know.
if you'd be embarrassed, but I don't. Now you've got all this cred as being like Mr. Heavy Music. I don't want to. I don't want to.
Yeah, don't spoil it. Don't spoil it. Don't spoil the mystique behind the curtain.
Yeah. John is just the heavier the better.
Yeah.
Only heavy music. They haven't listened to our All Fives episode apparently.
Oh, geez, that's right. Yeah. Yeah, that'll prove otherwise.
Yeah, not a heavy song in the bunch.
But yeah, I mean, my brain is like, stuck like in the past. I'm just like, I like stuff that's, familiar, comfortable, like stuff that I liked when I was a kid. Still resonates with me now, even if it's newer music. So, but I mean, I like all music that's, that is pleasing to the ear. This is definitely it. I can recognize how good this is, and I can definitely appreciate, a band that, could rest on their laurels, and instead they're making new music. And that just proves that they're like, really, Deep Purple is just a musician's band,
Sure.
I mean, why else would they still be making music? I mean, that's like, you could just tell by the music they made since the day that they started that they just are musicians, no matter who's in the band. They love music, they make music. Yep. For them to be a legacy act at this point would be like ridiculous.
Right. Yeah, it's great that they're not doing that, because that would be super lame.
Yeah. So while this is an album that I would like, I had actually listened to it mostly in the background. So I would say, yeah, this would be a cool album to have on in the background for me. I wouldn't actively listen to most of it.
Mm-hmm. I don't actively listen to anything other than when we do the show, to be honest.
Yeah.
I did listen to this one with a little more attention to get ready for the episode, take a few notes, but other than that, I mean, I never listen to music with like 100% focus. It's because we don't 100% focus on anything anymore. No. Not what we do as a species, sadly.
Nope. Yeah.
If my kids allowed me more than 2 minutes uninterrupted, maybe I would.
Cool.
All right. Well, with that, I guess we will talk again next week.
I guess we will.
All right. Later, my friend.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to the Deep Purple podcast. If you like what you hear and would like more episodes in the future, please donate on Patreon to support the show. You can also leave us a review in Apple Podcasts to help new people discover the show. You can follow us on YouTube, Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook for show updates. See deeppurplepodcast.com for more details. Thank you for listening.